My stepsister lied about being pregnant at my engagement party, so I exposed her, and it blew up in ways I never expected. I, 27, female, got engaged to my long-term boyfriend, 27, male, a week ago, and hosted a party to announce it 2 days later. I was as excited about it as any newly engaged woman is, but it was ruined by my stepsister, 24, when she decided to go ahead and announce that she was pregnant at my engagement party. I think it's common decency to ask before you announce something like that at someone else's party, to make sure that they're okay with it, but my stepsister is a brat and didn't do any of it. I wasn't even shocked that she did this because she's always been jealous of me, and constantly looks for ways to either hog all the limelight or pull me down with jibes and mean comments. Even at my graduation party, she'd been sure to try and upstage me by getting blackout drunk, which meant that my parents had to take care of her, and everyone else was only concerned about her well-being. Her dad married my mom when I was in my freshman year, and ever since then, my stepsister has absolutely hated my guts. I don't even know why she hates me so much. I guess it's probably because her dad treats me equally well. She can't stand me because she wants everyone to treat her like she's a princess or something, and I don't do that. She's had it in for me ever since then, and has made it a point to never be able to let me have my day. Everything has to be about her, all the damn time. But I was sick of it now, and I just couldn't take it anymore. It was already bad enough that she'd ruined so many important days of my life by making them all about herself, and even now, as an adult woman, she was still pulling off stuff like this. So I decided I was going to teach her a lesson and make sure she never repeats anything of the sort, by hook or by crook. I already had an idea that she really wasn't pregnant, and was probably just saying it so that all eyes would be on her on something that was supposed to be my day. But I had no idea how I was going to prove it. I was getting married in a month or two, and I was pretty sure that if I didn't nip this in the bud, then she'd probably announce her miscarriage or something around the time of my wedding and make that about herself as well. So I just absolutely had to do something about this and reveal her lie. 2 days ago, I was stalking her account on Instagram, and I found something really interesting that confirmed my beliefs. Just a day before my engagement party, she'd posted herself with her friends, and there was a very noticeable glass of red wine in her hand. I took a screenshot of that story update and made sure that I included the timing as well. If she'd known that she was pregnant, then she most certainly wouldn't have been drinking. So this could only mean that she'd made it all up. And just for good measure, before telling anyone else about what I'd found out, I decided to go ahead and message her boyfriend about it. It was relatively easy to find his account because she tagged him in all sorts of mushy posts. I found his account, and out of sheer pettiness, I sent him a congratulatory message on fatherhood. Obviously, if he wasn't in on whatever my stepsister was up to behind his back, he'd freak out for sure. And I'm sure that he had no idea since they'd only been together for 5 months or something, so there was no way she was showing him her crazy side so soon. Just as I'd expected, he responded within minutes, and he was confused as hell. He told me that his girlfriend wasn't pregnant and I must have mistaken him for someone else altogether. But I went ahead and sent him a video of my stepsister announcing her pregnancy at my party, which someone else had recorded, thankfully, and told him that they didn't have to keep it a secret anymore. He left my message on scene, but I didn't care since the damage had already been done, and I was sure that this would cause a serious fight, at the very least. Or maybe I'd get lucky and she'd get dumped. But something even worse, and totally unprecedented, happened after that. It didn't affect me, and truth be told, I think my stepsister deserved it, but the rest of my family is really upset that it happened. So, her boyfriend went ahead and posted that clip on all his socials and a screenshot of my text, with my username, with a long rant about how his girlfriend had been driving him nuts for the past few months, and had completely turned into a psycho, obsessive stalker just a few weeks into their relationship. Honestly, I'd thought that I'd been exposing my stepsister, but I think he did most of the revelation. Even I was shocked to learn that apparently she'd forbidden him from speaking to any other females, and would throw a temper tantrum every time he tried to explain that he still had female friends and co-workers who he couldn't just cut off. Not only that, but when he had enough and tried to break up with her, she started talking about how her life had no meaning without him, and she wouldn't want to live if he was going to break up with her, which was absolutely insane, even by my stepsister's standards. She pretended that everything was fine, but she was crazy and he was scared to leave. He was literally at his wit's end already about how to escape this relationship when I sent him that clip, and that was the last straw. He knew that he had no other option but to go public with this information, since that would be the only way to get rid of her, and so he was doing exactly that. He clarified that she absolutely was not pregnant, and also that he was done with her. Now, I truly felt sorry for whatever the poor guy had to put up with, because my stepsister absolutely sounded like the typical toxic girlfriend. In a way, I'm glad that my pettiness led to him standing up for himself. but it did have consequences as well, since now my family isn't speaking to me anymore. My stepsister went ballistic after that post and showed up at my house, screaming in my face about how I'd ruined her relationship because I was jealous and insecure and that I needed to fix it. I was terrified because she looked like she was going to hurt me, so I pushed her out and slammed the door shut. She continued screaming the worst names she could come up with for me, and I waited it out, and eventually she got tired and left after saying that she was going to ruin my life the same way that I'd ruined hers. That was yesterday, and well, I'm still really scared as to what she's going to do, but in a more immediate sense. It's my parents that I'm worried about, since they sent me a message a couple of hours ago where they mentioned that they were disappointed in me. They thought that I'd stabbed my own family in the back, and that was a really low move, so they wouldn't be attending my wedding, and neither would they be speaking to me unless I apologized to my stepsister publicly. I don't think she deserves an apology in the slightest, let alone a public one, but I do think that what I did was a little out of line. I could have just gone to my parents and told them that she wasn't actually pregnant and let out my years of pent-up frustration instead of going the petty way and trying to actively sabotage her relationship. I think that just put me in the same boat as my stepsister, and I definitely regret doing that, even though I still don't think her breakup was entirely my fault. I mean, the woman was crazy, so of course her boyfriend was going to leave at some point, and my message probably just acted as a catalyst for it or something. And quite frankly, she needs serious help, so I don't feel bad for her. But now, I don't know. I think that my decision to go behind her back might have seemed like a really cruel move to my parents, since they've never really noticed how my stepsister treats me and tries to steal my thunder at every event. They haven't been responding to any of my calls or texts, and I feel awful now. AT here for ruining my stepsister's relationship? Update 1. So, I didn't apologize to her or anything because, obviously, like I'd said earlier, I don't think I did anything wrong. What I did do, though, was try to explain to my parents why I did the whole texting her boyfriend thing in the first place. They hadn't been responding to my calls, so I had no other option but to visit them in person to explain my side of the story. And I'm not going to pretend that it was all easy breezy. They were very cold and looked quite angry, but thankfully, still invited me in. I told them everything that my stepsister had done and how it felt from my perspective. Of course, they've been present at most events and had seen my sister's behavior firsthand, but it hadn't occurred to them that she might be doing all of it just for attention. She did get reprimanded for being underage and still drinking at my graduation, but it didn't matter since her goal was to take the attention away from me by falling sick, and she'd done so. Then, at my 21st birthday party, she decided to show up wearing the exact same dress that I'd bought for myself. And once again, it was all about her and how quirky she was. When I threw a party last year because of a huge promotion that I'd worked hard for, she even stole that away from me by making it all about her last breakup, and how she was so torn up about it still. So, what was meant to be a celebration of my achievements turned into a pity party for her. It was frustrating to constantly have all the significant days of your life hijacked on purpose, and it just got to me. So, maybe what I did was really mean and spiteful, but it was nothing compared to what she'd been putting me through ever since we were teens, and I couldn't take it anymore. I just had to do something to get back at her, so I did. After I explained my side of the situation, my parents seemed to soften up a bit because, like I said, I don't think they'd ever thought of it that way. But they still did think that what I'd done was out of line, and I should have known better. They didn't want me to apologize publicly anymore or whatever. But they said that they'd better keep the two of us apart now, since it's very obvious that, despite their best attempts, we're never going to get along. I'm glad they realized that now, since the only reason I even pretended to consider her family was out of respect for my parents. Since it would be a bad look for them if it seemed that we couldn't even stay together in the same room for their sake. However, that's done now, and I no longer have to put up an act, and even my parents are back on talking terms with me, so all's well that ends well. Update 2. A couple of days have passed since the last interaction I had with my stepsister, and while I had assumed that this was going to blow over, it clearly hasn't, which is why I'm back. As far as I know, she'd forced her boyfriend to let her move in with him, but now that they've broken up, he's kicked her out and has threatened to call the cops if she shows up near his place ever again. So she moved in with our parents yesterday, and she was probably told by them to maintain her distance from me from now on. She didn't take that kindly. They got into a huge fight, and she told them that I'd been the one to ruin her relationship, so now I would have to suffer the consequences, and complaining about it won't make it any better. I've got to say, it's a pretty poor move for her to be fighting with them, especially when she doesn't even have a place to live right now. My mom's been telling me that she's been insufferable since her breakup, and all she does is complain about how I'm the worst. Of course, they're trying their very best not to take sides, but she's making it very difficult for them. Anyway, coming to what happened, she decided that Just trying to turn our parents against me wasn't going to cut it, and she needed to do something actively evil to get her revenge. And to do that, a couple of hours ago, she posted an edited picture of me with my coworker to make it seem more suspicious. She'd edited out a bunch of people and manipulated it to look as though he had his hand on my waist, which obviously wasn't the case. She accused me of being a cheater who had ruined her relationship just because she'd known about my cheating. I don't even know who she was fooling with because literally everyone who knows me knows I've been with my fiancé for over 12 years, and I would never, ever cheat on him. On top of that, she'd done a terrible job at editing the pictures as well, and it looked very obvious that someone had been messing around with it. I don't know why she'd wasted so much of her time on doing such a bad job of it, but whatever. I didn't want to let it stay up for long because it would be weird for me and my coworker, and I didn't want him to feel uncomfortable. He'd laughed it off, obviously, since he was a close friend as well and knew the relationship that my stepsister and I shared, but even then, this was weird. I couldn't make her delete it myself since she'd blocked me, and my friends had been the ones to inform me about what she'd posted. So I just told our parents about what she'd done. They said they'd handle it. Well, I hope they do because, all jokes aside, I don't think this is a good look for me at work. Update 3. Hey guys. So only 2 days have passed since my stepsister posted that edited picture of me with my coworker, and my parents were able to make her delete it after a lot of argument. She just point-blank refused to delete it, according to my mother, insisting that it wasn't edited and she caught me in the act, red-handed, so she needed to let the world know what kind of person I was. Nobody was buying that, thankfully. She finally took that post down when Dad said that he'd have to tell her to leave if she kept up these attention-seeking stunts. She'd already been schooled by them about how she needed to grow up and stop trying to make everything about herself all the time. But she refused to learn. I'm just glad that they took what I said seriously and realized that my stepsister did in fact have a serious problem. Today, my fiancé called me up at work to let me know that my stepsister had shown up at his restaurant and was refusing to leave. He's the head chef at a popular restaurant, and I couldn't believe that she was getting him involved as well. She'd been ordering drink after drink, and when the bartender informed her that they couldn't possibly serve her anymore since she was already really drunk, she started throwing a temper tantrum and started shouting about how she was related to the head chef, so she deserved to be treated like a queen, and that she'd have them shut down if they didn't do as she asked them to. She had to be escorted out by security eventually, after the whole scene that she made, but the damage had already been done since she'd been screaming her head off about how she was the soon-to-be sister-in-law of their head chef, and they needed to cater to every need of hers. She'd taken his name, so of course that sparked a lot of gossip at his work. He tried his best to downplay how much this was bothering him because he didn't want me to feel bad about the situation, but I knew him too well and could tell that he was lying. I know that at this point, even complaining to my parents is no good because they cannot exactly control every single thing that she does and watch over her every second of the day. I'm just so frustrated by this whole awful situation and wish I could do something to teach her a lesson once and for all. I'm sick of her thinking that she can get away with anything and everything. Update 4. So a week has passed since my stepsister wreaked havoc at my fiancé's workplace, and I decided I had enough and needed to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't constantly keep telling my parents to watch her since she was an adult woman and had free will. The most that they could do was reprimand her. Even that was clearly ineffective. They could evict her, but that would just give her free rein to do whatever she wanted to. I thought about it for a couple of days. Then I decided that I would just give her a taste of her own medicine and do to her what she had been doing to me and my fiancé. She'd been getting our CO workers involved because she knew for a fact that our friends knew us too well to turn against us. However, in a public setting, with people to enforce more rules, things would be different, and we could easily get into trouble. I didn't ever think that I would do something as insane as this, but then if she was trying to mess with me, then I didn't think I needed to stay above it and be kind to her. I'd done it once, and ruined her already toxic relationship, which was honestly a good deed, since I practically saved her boyfriend from suffering for longer. And I didn't see any harm in being petty once more, because that was the only way out of this, and the only language that she understood. So 2 days back, I decided that I would show up at her workplace and embarrass her in the same way that she'd embarrassed me. In fact, embarrass might not even be a word serious enough to cover what I did. It wasn't even hard to find out where she worked, since she'd bragged about her high-end job as a fashion photographer for a really popular magazine. I literally took a day off to surprise her at work. I bought a chocolate cake and had the words attention-seeking written on it in red frosting so that it stood out. I was able to convince the receptionist not to alert my stepsister that she had a visitor, saying that it was her birthday that day, and I wanted to surprise her. I even had the cake to show for it, so it wasn't too difficult. I asked her if we could use an empty conference room so that I could set up the place while she got people to gather in the room. After I was on my own in that conference room, I opened the box of the cake in the center of the room, and beside it I kept a bunch of leaflets that I printed out, where I had written a greatly detailed description of what exactly I thought of my stepsister, and what she had put me through my entire childhood. After having done that, I sneaked out by myself. I wasn't present in person to witness what happened after that, sadly. But lucky for me, I had a friend whose brother was an intern at the place, which is why my plan seemed all the more foolproof. I felt like an evil genius while leaving the building, very honestly. From her I learned that, when they'd all gathered in the room and found me missing, they'd been confused, but the icing on the cake made my stepsister flip out on everyone. She yelled at the receptionist for 20 minutes straight for not alerting her and letting just about anyone into the building. And then fought with their HR manager as well, because obviously it wasn't even her birthday, and yet they'd all gathered here like fools. By then people had already started reading the leaflets that I'd left, and even though they tried to confiscate it all, people had managed to pocket some of them. And eventually everyone knew about the contents of the leaflets. Whether or not they believed it was secondary, but one thing was for sure, this definitely would lead to a total scandal about her at her work and get people talking, which is exactly what I had wanted. She hasn't contacted me ever since, and while I'm sure my parents know what has happened, they haven't said a word about it either, and we are all just pretending that it's all fine, which is okay with me. I don't really care anymore. I did what I had to do and got my revenge, or whatever people want to call it. My motive was to make sure she knows not to mess with me anymore, and I think I succeeded in sending that message across. And she's pretty much left me alone after that, with no calls and no texts. Now I just want to get married peacefully. Update 5. Hey folks, I know it's been more than a month since the last update, and I haven't filled people in on whatever has been up, but to be fair, not much has happened with regards to my stepsister. In better news though, I got married last week, and it was fabulous. It was absolutely perfect, and went the way I had imagined it. Obviously, both my parents attended, and my dad, I don't think of him as my stepdad honestly, but my stepsister will never be my sister, walked me down the aisle. It was a dream, and beautiful, and emotional, but also fun, and I had a great time. My stepsister tried her best to convince our parents not to attend out of respect for her, and even put her foot down, and gave them an ultimatum, saying that they could either refuse to attend or she'd move out. I don't even know how that was a threat, since she's literally in her 20s, and the only reason she still has a roof over her head is because Dad is too kind to kick her out, despite her antics. But my parents had enough of it, and told her that if she tried to mess things up for me again, then they would be the ones kicking her out anyway, so she better watch her behavior. That shut her up, but yeah, anyway. She's not tried to do anything to me directly ever since the incident at her work, and I guess she's learned her lesson once and for all. This is good, because I'm about to leave for my honeymoon tomorrow, and I don't want any more trouble from her.